Welcome to the Art AI 2021 Festival online programme. I'm Tracy Harwood, I'm director of the festival. And this evening we have a fantastic lineup for you with two amazing speakers, Luba Elliott and Libby Heaney. Before I introduce our first speaker, I would like to take a moment to thank our supporters this year: Arts Council England, De Montfort University, High Cross Shopping Centre, Phoenix Arts Centre, Leicester City Council, the Leicester Bid and the Loyal Free app, to all our venue partners and to our technical support team, Leicester-based Inspirate, who are helping with our installations, and Sean Clark of the Computer Arts Archive and Interact Digital Arts, who is helping with our live stream this evening. Thank you very much, all of you. We are recording the stream of this event on YouTube rather than on our Zoom channel. So that means your comments are going to be seen in the recording too. So don't say anything or don't comment if you don't want to be seen. Following the event, we will be making the recording of the talks available on our YouTube channel. The chat on the channel is co-hosted by me and also by Chris Tyra, who is the Digital Arts Programme Manager at Phoenix. Do please add comments, thoughts and questions though, and of course feel free to chat to each other too, but keep it friendly. We are welcoming young people here this evening, as well as those who are interested to hear more in general about creative AI and creative technologies as well, who obviously know a bit more. It's great to have a mixed audience, and thanks very much for joining us. And now to this evening. The plan is that each of our speakers will talk for 15 to 20 minutes, which will leave us a bit of time for Q&A of about 15 to 20 minutes at the end. We're going to start with Luba. And I'm going to introduce Luba now. Luba is the Art AI Festival's curator. She also curates, produces and researches into the various applications of artificial intelligence in the creative industries. She is currently working to educate and engage a broad public about the latest developments in creative AI at venues across the arts, business and technology spectrum. She has chased AI artwork through talks, exhibitions and events at the Photographers Gallery, the Victorian Albert Museum, ZKM Karlsruhe, Impact Festival, the Libby Heaney Centre for the Future of Intelligence, CogX, Neurips and ICCV. As well as the Art AI Festival, her recent projects include the online gallery AIartonline.com and Neurips Machine Learning for Creativity and Design Workshop. She is an honorary senior research fellow at the UCL Centre for Artificial Intelligence, and prior to that, she worked in startups, including the art collector database Larry's List. She obtained her undergraduate degree in modern languages at the University of Cambridge and has a certificate in design thinking from the Hasso-Plattner Institute D School in Potsdam. So Luba, the screen is all yours.
Thank you, Tracy, for a very thorough introduction about all my work. Right, so let me share the screen and then we can get started with my talk. Right. So hopefully you can see a blank slide with a state of the AI art. So in this talk, I'm going to give you an overview of some of the most exciting AI art projects I've seen in the past maybe year or so. And so we'll start with this work by Daniel Ambrosi called Infinite Dreams. And normally when I do all these talks, I feel like we always start with kind of Deep Dream, which is kind of an AI technique that was kind of used, that was like initiated like a few years back to kind of emphasize features in an image and to make them very bright and colorful. And Daniel Ambrosi has been working with this type of technique for like a while now. And now as the field progresses, his work has also progressed in a way to kind of move away from from impressionism more towards kind of cubism. So you can kind of see that he is an artist that is very much focused on kind of the pattern and how that can be used to help kind of convey a particular natural image. And these are two of the works that I've enjoyed curating. And moving on, the face is quite an important, I think, part of the interest in this field by a number of artists. And I've seen a lot of different works kind of working with faces over the past few years. And this year they get a little bit more exciting from kind of my point of view. So I'll start off with this work by Golan Levin and Lingdong Huang called Ambigrammatic Figures. So it's a collection of faces that are legible both kind of upside down and right side up, and they can be displayed in any orientation. And in the 18th and 19th centuries, these were kind of often used to depict various kind of dualities. And this is a more kind of contemporary take on these images. So kind of using AI to generate kind of these faces that you can kind of read either way. And likewise, I don't know if you can recognize faces here, so for this project by Joel Simon and Tal Shiri called Derivative Works, the two artists have used some kind of you can see the faces now. So they've used an algorithm that combines kind of various images and which are then shown to a neural network, and this neural network kind of detects a face in them. So maybe if I kind of play this loop again, you can kind of see all the different kind of combinations of how these kind of parts of the image can be put together, and then like gradually how they become a face. So again, I think this is kind of an interesting take, particularly because a lot of the original collage images, they have been created in Art Breeder using Big GAN. So it's one of these kind of techniques that has been kind of very popular to generate faces and other images. And moving on, Teratome by Terence Broad. And to me, this is a very kind of beautiful image, because you can see kind of the high definition of, so in the right image, it's very kind of high quality. You can see the eye like quite well, and the hair, it's kind of very beautiful. So it is clear. It shows very kind of clearly how some of this AI kind of generation technology has progressed to become very realistic. But on the other hand, you can kind of see that, you know, parts of the mouth are maybe a bit blurry and the other eye's missing. So that sort of recalls some of the earlier kind of images generated by these systems, where the eyes and the ears and various body parts are not always kind of in the right place. So yeah, it's a really cool project, and Terence Broad developed it by also kind of working with his own algorithm, where he inserted kind of filters and this kind of layer of the AI that generates the images, and kind of through that he was able to get kind of these different effects. And then Meltem Tahim, so she's an illustrator kind of from Turkey, kind of working a little bit with AI here. And so it's interesting because she's kind of using AI to kind of try and combine the illustration and kind of her efforts at like depicting the illustration kind of herself. So you can see in the first two images, one is the animation, and then the other is the video of the artist mimicking the animation, and then kind of you get the AI. Let me run it again. You get the kind of the AI trying to generate various kind of various combinations of the two. So that kind of that's kind of in this line of tradition of working with AI to kind of help further understand kind of your practice or an artistic practice, and how yeah, how kind of the way you draw can be reinterpreted by the machine to kind of produce something different that you might not have thought about. And this project by Meta Mariansky called Evolutionary Faces was, so this was submitted to the AI Art Online Gallery that Tracy mentioned, and it was probably the project which got the people excited the most. And that's because, yeah, it's depicting faces, but in a very kind of unusual pattern, just using a curve. And the way this was kind of made technically was that there was a program that was generating curves, and it was pitted against the facial recognition algorithm. And yeah, so this kind of algorithm told the curve to become more and more face-like. So yeah, these are the kind of facial kind of curves that emerged. And yeah, I think this is kind of very beautiful and simple, and of course kind of portrays the face in a very kind of different manner to a lot of the very realistic generated images we see. And yeah, moving away from faces, there's a project by Guillaume Stisevich called I Can Remember, which which tries to draw our empathy and kind of evoke our feelings towards the machine, because there's kind of this desk and a plotter that's out in this beautiful poetic field, and the machine is kind of writing a poem. And the way this was done was there was some local photographs taken of this field, and then the machine was kind of placed there in the spot of the photographer to kind of become the poet and kind of almost replace the human, and see how kind of creative it could be, and what feelings it would kind of evoke from the audiences. And on kind of almost the opposite side, we have a project by Lauren Lee McCarthy called Someone, where you have humans trying to take on the role of an AI. So many of us have an Amazon Alexa or a Google Home in our houses, and Lauren McCarthy invited kind of these participants to kind of collaborate with others who have these Alexas in their homes. So you can see that this is kind of like a view of somebody's home, and the people who are sitting by the computers, so they had access to all the typical settings that an Alexa has, right? So I don't know, it's maybe to kind of increase the temperature in a house, turn up a light bulb or something like that. And they were doing exactly that in the houses of these other participants. And yeah, this of course kind of makes you realize of almost kind of the supportive and almost intrusive role some of these home devices have in our houses, and what would happen if there were actual kind of humans kind of doing that work instead of the machines. And again, another project from the AI Art Online Gallery by Yuguang Zhang, Non-Human. And this project looks at the hidden humanness in objects, and imagines what in a world where a human exists in non-human forms. So if you kind of saw in the beginning of the video, I'll start playing again. So you had all these kind of people lying on the bed, and then the AI system kind of figured out how the sheet was changing based on the movements, and based on that, it kind of generated this image of the sheets moving when there is kind of no human there, almost like traces of kind of human forms, and kind of this object, this sheet, becoming more of an kind of an animate thing. And Yeah, this work by Yumakishi is kind of, it's based on on a painting from the medieval period, and the artist was kind of interested in the way a lot of these kind of medieval portraits were meant to represent kind of figures that could be like anyone, and in this case he decided to replace the original face of from this kind of painting with an AI generated kind of multi-eye face to kind of showcase maybe the direction some of the faces are kind of going in now, and gives this kind of idea of it's influenced by Kevin Kelly's ideas of alien intelligence, and raises questions about humanity through kind of the eyes of AI. And another work where humans are missing, but only kind of certain types of humans. And this is a work called Salaf by Nouf Al-Jawasir, who is kind of going through explorations in her genealogical journey using kind of her own kind of voices, and also kind of looking through lots of different photographs from a period when her ancestors traveled across the Saudi Kingdom and Iraq, which at that point was kind of under the influence from, I think, people from Britain and kind of maybe other countries. And she was interested in kind of telling the story of her ancestors without this kind of British colonialist gaze. So to do that, she worked with kind of with an AI system that was able to kind of identify which kind of humans or which part of the image were kind of most linked to the British at that point in time, and it removed them from the image, as you can see, kind of through the white shapes that are missing, to kind of create a version of her Middle Eastern history that is kind of more true to the way her ancestors might have seen it. And Maria Klingemann is of course an artist who's been kind of working with AI for a very long time, and he's been doing lots of different faces. And in this kind of short video, he's got a project called The Common Denominator, where members of the audience, and this is also kind of normally interactive, could kind of pick a point in the image and kind of tweak it to increase, to like pick a certain number and increase that influence in the image, and through that kind of generate various different types of images, kind of almost enlisting every possible type. And it also kind of helps visualize and understand a lot of the kind of image generation process with AI, because of course lots of different possibilities are normally generated, and then it's kind of up to the artist to pick a selection to then kind of make a stills. And here you've got kind of the audience that's kind of dragging these like points and kind of influencing the generation kind of directly. And in Kirill Benzi's work, These Are Not Flowers, it's a work where you can see these flowers, but they're actually composed of guinea pig, traffic light, cabbage butterfly, strawberry, comic book, bell pepper. So all these kind of categories have been mixed into the kind of the data set used to kind of generate the image. And so they are all kind of inside these images, which we as humans would probably only see as flowers, but actually there are lots of other different categories within them. And likewise, kind of thinking about the gaze of the machine and the way it's able to identify different kind of objects. You've got this work called Mountain by Shungsem by Kim Young-hong. So by two artists from South Korea, where mountains are very important. And so these mountain images gradually, some of the pixels are being erased until the AI can no longer recognize that it's a mountain. So you can kind of see how the machine kind of looks at it and what disappears. Because of course, if you as a kind of human were looking at it, you might kind of take away different images than you would if you want to make it recognizable to an AI. And Sophia Crespo and Entangled others, they've been working on generating lots of different artificial creatures that are completely imagined and yet could exist on this earth in some way. And this is also kind of one of these beautiful creatures. And they're kind of activist 3D models and filters that you can actually use on your phone. And so this is a remarkable insect. Its abundance is so great that it can be seen from space. And also, like, some of the text that kind of accompanies the image has been also generated with an AI technique called GPT-2 to kind of provide more kind of context and give this AI creature its own kind of language and way of thinking. And I think just to kind of to go towards the end of my talk, a few or two recent trends that I would mention. So one is Clip or DALL-E, which is a system that was released in the beginning of the year by OpenAI. And this system can generate lots of images based on a text description. And it's drawn a lot of artistic attention and experimentation. And one of the projects I liked is some of these works by Simon Colton, where you can see that kind of the text used is architecture is visual art and the buildings speak for themselves. And then two kind of different kind of AI image generation systems based on this DALL-E and Clip variants have been used to generate images that kind of correspond to this visual art and buildings speak for themselves. So you can see some of them, they are like very realistic, those on the left side, and those on the right, they're like a bit busier and have a more distinct kind of aesthetic, which kind of draws onto some of the visualization kind of techniques that have been popular over the years. And again, this is kind of an image for dogs playing poker generated using one of these systems. And Janelle Shane made, let's see if this will play. So she made a video where each line of text was kind of generated by an AI, and then this text had a corresponding kind of image generated that became the video. And it was based on one of these Wellerman songs from TikTok that was very popular. So hopefully you recognize the song, and you can kind of see how the images kind of change along together with the lyrics. And just to touch on, let's see if I can actually move to my, I think this is probably my final slide. Just to kind of mention another trend that has been dominating the Twitter feed, and that is of course kind of NFTs, so non-fungible tokens. So it's kind of a system like on the blockchain that has become very popular amongst digital artists to kind of try and sell editions of the digital work online. And yeah, this is some work by Mike Tyker, an earlier project actually from 2017 that he kind of made when this type of image generation was state of the art. And to me, it's actually quite interesting to see how so many AI artists are now kind of working with NFTs, and they're making both work that is kind of in line with current state-of-the-art technology trends and interests, and also they're putting on some of their work kind of from the past, and it's still kind of generating a lot of excitement. And yeah, maybe this is something we can look at more in the Q&A if there is interest. But I think at this point, I should finish my talk. And if you have any questions, you should ask them at the end of the session. But you can also reach me on Twitter, email. And yeah, I think at this point, that's me done. And I should introduce Libby. Is that correct, Tracy?
Yes, that would be great. We'll do questions at the end, if that's okay. Yeah,
great. That's a good plan. Okay, so let me dig out what I have for Libby's introduction. So we're very much delighted to have Libby Heaney as our second speaker this evening. And Libby is, of course, exhibiting at the AI Art Festival this year with her work Elvis. And we've actually also hosted Libby's BritBot kind of, I think, 2 years ago. So Libby's very much an artist that's been kind of very supportive of our festival, and it's been great to see how her work has developed. And so Libby works with kind of moving image works, performances, participatory interactive experiences, and with technologies such as quantum computing, virtual reality, AI, and installations. And her practice uses humor, surrealism, and nonsense to subvert the capitalist appropriation of technology, the endless categorizations and control of humans and non-humans alike. Instead, Heaney uses tools like machine learning and quantum computing against their proper use to undo biases and to forge new expressions of collective identity and belonging with each other and the world. And Libby's exhibited her artwork widely, and I've had the pleasure to work with Libby for some of the festivals, certainly that I've hosted and I think in Dubai, in London, and so Libby's exhibited at venues like Arbat Gallery, ICA, V&A, Sheffield Documentary Festival, the Lowry, and Ars Electronica. And she's also currently a resident at Somerset House Studios. And I think that would be it from me. And I will leave you with Libby, who I'm sure will tell you lots of very exciting things about her work and deepfakes.
Thanks. Thanks so much, Luba. Always a lovely introduction, and nice to see you again remotely. And thank you to the festival for hosting my work, and to Tracy and everyone else on the festival team. It's like really nice to work with you all again. So today, yes, I'll just start by sharing my screen, and then Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about my work with deepfakes, which seems to be a lot of what I was doing in 2019. I think every work that I'm presenting today I did in 2019, and I think that last year I just didn't feel like performing because of a pandemic. I really just sort of, I don't know, went on to other stuff because of how I felt and how I felt in my body. And I think a lot of people probably had similar but different reactions to what was going on. So forgive that our work is slightly old, but I think it's still really relevant today, as you'll see.
We're entering an era in which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, Killmonger was right. or
So you can
Ben
see
Carson
that
is like Jordan Peele.
Is a deep fake.
This is a dangerous
very
time.
many ones. But I'll just leave it playing on mute in the background. So there's a few different ways of making deep fakes. This is one where you use existing footage, and then you can use a facial skeleton. It's called facial landmark structure to sort of couple it or map it to someone else. So it really appears like the person in the video is saying words that they actually didn't say. And there's limitations to this. Oops. Just leave it on pause there. There's limitations to this type of deep face. You've got kind of limited facial range, and I work with a different type of deep fake, as you'll see, where you can use your own body but just put someone else's face on top. But most deep fakes like this are either used for fake news. So for instance, in India, they did a deep fake of Modi, the Prime Minister. It's also to influence elections in Africa, in the country Gabon. So deep fakes are often used nefariously to nudge people for political gain and so on. They're also used a lot by artists, like in this case, to sort of highlight the dangers of deep fakes, and that's quite a popular use by artists. So when I was preparing this talk, oh yeah, so this is one of the deep fakes that I made in this vein. So I made this for a large multinational insurance company, and they were they're doing an internal marketing campaign to warn their staff about the dangers of deep fakes because people have been conned by them. It's much harder to clone voice. It's actually much easier to get an actor to do a voice copy of the person you're trying to create a deep fake of. I tried to do my voice previously, and it was so difficult to do, but you need much more data to do that. It's much easier with images. So this obviously is Claire Underwood from a House of Cards, and she's warning people about the dangers of deep fakes within their large insurance company. And then you can see this was the original actor. So you can see how compared to this, which looks like Claire Underwood from the TV show House of Cards, and this was a lady that we had in the studio with a team to try to, and then I created this, put this face over her face. So that's kind of one use of deepfakes, but within my art practice, I'm not really interested necessarily in this propaganda angle. Just another point to contextualize deepfakes. I did a Google a couple of days ago when I was putting this talk together about how sort of most deepfakes are made for porn, the porn industry, and the number at the moment a couple of days ago was 95%. So obviously it's really horrific for the people involved. I went onto the first porn site that came up, which is called Mr. Deepfakes, and I saw Natalie Portman. Well, I didn't watch the video, but Natalie Portman and Jessica Alba's were the first two celebrities that came up. Obviously, this is serious sexual abuse. It comes from certain people's need for control over women and a lack of respect and the objectification of women. In England, where I'm obviously based, it's not an offence to manipulate images in this way. In England and Wales at the moment, the law just covers real images. 5 days ago, you can see in this BBC article, Scotland just changed, well, you can't really see it, but the article was about how Scotland just changed the law to make it any sexual image that's posted online of a woman well, it's just illegal to do that now. It doesn't just need to be real images. So that's a step in the right direction. And you might think it's celebrities, but it's actually, you really don't need very many images anymore to create a deep fake. So people who are sort of not famous also have found deepfake pornographic videos of them online as well. So this is kind of a context within which anyone working with this sort of technology is working. I think it's really important to remember that. So in my practice, if you don't know my practice, my background is actually in physics, and I often draw on physical metaphors, optical metaphors, when I think about how to work with new technologies. So you can see the image on the left is an image of reflection. So when you're reflecting reality, you're really just displacing the same elsewhere. There's not so much potential for change, perhaps. Whereas on the right, the image of the CD, this is diffraction, which is a different optical phenomena. If you take white light and shine it on a CD, you see this like rainbow that comes off here. So you're really starting to reveal the differences in a seeming whole. You take something that appears so pure, white light, and you diffract it through a material apparatus, and you start to break it into bits. There's more to it, there's more parts than originally appears. And that's kind of how I approach most of my practice. And you'll see this with how I'm working with deepfakes here, rather than trying to copy reality. So like in the Claire Underwood video that you saw just a few moments ago, here within my art practice, that was commercial work. Within my art practice, I'm trying to do something different. So this is an example of one of my deepfakes. The very first deepfake that I made, I don't really show because I'm singing in it, and I'm such a terrible, I love to sing, but I'm such a terrible singer. I can't make myself show it. But in this one, I'm playing the role of Theresa May and Angela Merkel. Obviously, this was made when Theresa May was still the British Prime Minister. And yeah, I'll just play it and then I'll talk a bit more about it afterwards. I need to put the sound on, hang on.
Mindersteigenpunkt. XC2, XA, 7, XT2, XA, D. Nur Mieser Willi Sie sollten ist voraus mit einer Jahrwertiger Source ist verstellen und bekannt.
I'll just mute it while I talk a little bit over it. So here, it's me performing both of these characters. This was my second deep fake. So basically what I did was, yeah, what I did here was, I'd been working with language previously, with voices, with other projects that I'm not going to speak about today. And here I was really thinking about, well, I was asked by the Goethe Institute in London to make an artwork that thought about the Brexit referendum. So I took 2 neural networks, one for English and one for German, trained on political debates, so from the House of Parliament here and the Bundestag in Germany. Sorry, my German's so bad, so like Bundestag, no, anyway, in Germany. And I trained the neural networks independently for both of those languages, but really, really badly. So it became like a Dada poetry. And then I performed this poetry as the deepfakes, Theresa May and Angela Merkel. And that's kind of how I came to working with my body and language, as opposed to kind of more like chat bots that I was working with before. Now, the interesting thing about this piece, and it's disappeared again. Oh dear. The interesting thing, I'm just going to go back and see if I can get the end. At the end of the piece, here we go. The two languages, I trained another neural network that generated text at the level of characters on both English and German in the same data set. So it created this hybrid language. So rather than being one or the other, it was both at the same time. And then I duetted this. So rather than reciting the poetry at the same time but saying different words, this language came together.
Am I so political right? Policy reassured, so is this.
And just in that video, what I noticed was I was a much better Theresa May for my sins than Angela Merkel. And when you're working with the type of deepfake that I'm working with, where you really put someone's face over the actor's body, it really depends, unless you're doing lots of post-processing in After Effects. To get a really good deepfake, you want the bone structure to match. So the target, the actor, you want the bone structure to match the famous person or whoever you're superposing over. So because of that, I realized you could create hybrid bodies using deepfakes. I think I made Elvis next, but I'll show you this. This is another political one that I put onto TikTok, where I became Boris Johnson. And I made these Theresa May plates, like commemoration plates. You know, like we have them in gift shops here in London sometimes. And because when you're working so overtly with politics in your art practice, like it becomes dated very quickly. So I was kind of criticizing my own work through this piece as well. So I made these plates, and then Boris, who is a lizard playing a recorder, drawing on meme culture here and conspiracy theory, he starts smashing them. So I'll show you a clip of this, and this sits on TikTok. So this is one of the Theresa May commemoration plates.
Welcome to Jurassic Park.
And I don't look 100% like Boris. It's a good thing. Just a meme nation. It's really drawing on a lot of sort of memes that I like as well. And I made these works during
to Jurassic
when
Park.
Boris prorogued Parliament, so when he was trying to sort of seize control. There was lots of protests going on in London at the time. Of Boris. And yeah, so Elvis is the work that I'm showing in the AI Art Festival. This is my body. So I'll go back. So this is my body with Elvis's face over it. And then the other is a 2-channel work. This is Elvis. It's old footage of Elvis with my face on it. I don't know why this is happening. I'm so sorry. So I'm really looking at it's a video portrait, there's no sound. And I'm really thinking about kind of what would it mean if Elvis was a woman. So I'm thinking about gender biases and trying to disrupt those, sort of appropriating someone else's body and questions around what that means, what are the politics around that. Since this work has been part of the AI Art Festival, the short clip of the video on YouTube is it's not really gone viral as such, but it's had 4,000 watches, which is a lot for me. And every day I get a new message trolling me. So you can see I did the screen grab a day or so ago. And Elvis is obviously very precious to a lot of people. And the fact that I've put my face over him has caused a lot of tension with certain people who's either seen it at the festival or perhaps come across it because of the YouTube algorithms, and they've made lots of these comments in response, which I find like good. It's provoking conversation around what deepfakes are. You know, it's interesting how there's so much deepfake porn around, yet me putting my face on someone who's been dead for decades, and he's often used as kind of an icon in art and so on, has caused such a response. I think I'm going to wrap up there, but just to say that no, I think I'm just going to wrap up there, I think, and so there's lots of time for questions. So thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much for listening to me. And then I think I'll pass back over to Tracy, is it? Or
yes,
Luba?
by all means. Thank you so much, both of you, for such thought-provoking presentations this evening. We've had some questions come through in the chat, actually, and I've got a few questions for you too, but we'll start with the ones that have come through so far. Janice has asked, mainly I think when Luba was doing her talk, can artists submit their work to an AI gallery, or is there any platform where you can share or submit artistic projects created with AI?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in terms of the AI art online gallery that I've kind of mentioned, it's so it's a project that I normally kind of do once a year. So there is usually an open call for submissions sometime in the summer, and then kind of selected work is then displayed online. But I think if you're working with AI and you want to share your work, then it's like really good to engage with the community. So a lot of this community is actually very active on Twitter. So yeah, you can start kind of following them and then start sharing your work under maybe like creative AI or AI art hashtags. And I think some people are also moving on to Instagram. So just try and see kind of who fits your aesthetic and share your work there.
I'm also seeing some work on Patreon at the moment. I don't know if you guys are seeing that as a trend where people that are making small contributions are becoming subscribers, and that work is being made exclusively to those followers, which I think is quite an interesting model for development of new work too, but not necessarily for generating broad audiences, I think. There's another question. I think this one also for Luba, but probably both of you actually can tackle this one. What are your thoughts on the ethics of using faces in AI artwork? This question is from Violet Graham. You mentioned in a number of works that seem to use face detection. So when is it appropriate to use face detection in works? Who wants to tackle that first?
Yeah, no, I'll say a few words, and then I'm sure Libby has something to say about that as well. So Yeah, I think it depends, right? So faces come into this in kind of at least two angles, right? So one is, yeah, face detection. So looking at something and trying to figure out if that is a face and also whose face it could be. And then on the other hand, you also have kind of, generating faces, right? So a lot of the images I showed, there were lots of kind of, faces that were generated. And on the ethical side, I think in terms of image generation, it really kind of depends on the data set. If it's a data set of your faces, or like you have the right to use the data set, I think it's kind of great. And I remember there was a case when I don't know if there was a data set of a lot of faces that has been kind of collated from Flickr, and some tech companies were beginning to use it. And I remember there was a lot of kind of backlash because, of course, when you as an individual upload your pictures to Flickr, you don't necessarily want them to become part of this kind of machine of thousands of photos that then, I don't know, become used in various sorts of contexts. So I think like it's really kind of being owning the data that's really important on the generation side. And in terms of detecting faces, again, I think like some of the projects I showed where it was like, I don't know if it's like maybe this kind of collage of different kind of pieces of an image that didn't really look like a face. I think using detecting a face that is actually quite fun and interesting and causes you to think about what actually makes a face. But if you're like trying to recognize faces of people in like a protest or something like that, then of course that is something completely different, and something that is of course of concern. And I don't know, Libby, if you have something to add.
Yeah, of course. So with face detection, I don't think there's a good solution personally, but often algorithms, machine learning algorithms can only spot faces, or depend, whatever category you're training on, based on the data they're given. So there's been cases where certain algorithms aren't able to detect Black people because there weren't no Black people in the data sets in the first place, or they get confused between people of color and other. There's a case where I think Google search algorithms, I think it was Google, I can't quite remember who it was, were confusing people of color with gorillas, which was obviously like not right and needs to be corrected. Saying that, if you're included in the data set, it doesn't necessarily solve the problem either. We were just talking before this talk started between ourselves about the Panorama AI program that was aired, I think last week now, and it was talking about face detection of minority ethnic groups within China, and how they had algorithms that had been trained specifically to detect these groups, so they're able to find them within a crowd and so on. So this is the case of inclusion in a data set, but then it's still algorithms still being used for not really bad things. So I guess it depends a lot on context, who's. It's not just about the data, but it's like, what is the program being used for, who owns the program, future uses of a program, because I know people who created ImageNet, a large data set to begin with, didn't expect it to be used the way it ended up being used. In terms of the data, say, that I'm using in my work, obviously I'm not using lots of celebrity faces. I do speak to IP lawyers about, I have a good friend who's an IP barrister, about like the work that I'm doing. And it depends on the country you're showing your work in. So in the UK, you can't copyright your face. In America, you can kind of say you're not allowed to use my likeness in work. There's laws around pastiche and quotation. There's special laws around. So if you're using little bits of data from lots of different sources, it might be argued if it went to court that you're doing quotation. There's also some copyright laws around the artists being able do satire and pastiche and so on, use likeness or data for or images for that. But the rules around AI and copyright law are very, very grey at the moment, and they're still in the process of being developed. So yeah, and to be fair, like I think my work highlights some of the issues with this. Certainly is part of the work to discuss these things, and some of the works that I haven't showed you today, we do actively comment on these things and like the sort of power involved and the responsibility involved and so on. Yeah.
It's a really good point, and it's part of the reason we actually selected Elvis to be part of the Art AI Festival. So really great points, both of you, thank you. And actually to that point, Violet has asked a question for Libby. She says, and made a comment, I like how your Elvis work makes me think about a digital form of drag. Do you think that the future of AI holds possibilities in live deepfake performances?
Absolutely. So I can think, so the work that I didn't show when I stopped was a karaoke artwork, which was live deepfake from 2019 again, when we could still all get together in a room. And the version that I wanted to show you was called Resurrection. And I resurrected 4 different icons of Western music. So Whitney Houston, my favorite, David Bowie, Elvis again, and Aretha Franklin. And people could come up and perform karaoke as their favorite star, and different effigies of them would appear on the screen. And my host, I don't host it, I'm sat behind doing sort of the tech stuff. My host is a wonderful performer called Sammy James Britton, and he talks to people about what it means to kind of be interacting with these faces. How do they feel? Does it make them feel like kind of more sort of like David Bowie, or is it kind of quite strange? Currently, to do live AI is quite glitchy because you're running at 30 frames a second. So, you know, we displayed it on one of those big pixelated monitors, you know, with the little LED pixels on, and I was working with the data in such a way that different versions of, say, Bowie, who's known for all his different characters, would come up on the screen depending on how you moved. Now, since then, so that wasn't drag, but since then, a really great artist who exhibited, I think, with you guys, Art AI Festival 2 years ago, Jake Elwes, has done this lovely project called the Zizi Project, which is all about drag, live AI and drag. So go on his website, or just, it's Jake. Can we put in the chat?
We'll add it. We'll add a link to it in the notes.
Yeah, so he's been working in lockdown with like loads of drag performers and made a website and is planning to do some performances. So I'd strongly recommend you check his work out. But I think it's from last 2020. Yep.
Thank you very much for that. Now, another question here, slightly different tack, from Sanidi. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Question is, art and AI fascinates me, but I have no experience of making any of it. Where and how can I start?
Good that you're interested. I think nowadays there's an increasing kind of number of tools that cater to different abilities, and one that a lot of people like is called Runway ML. So I think if you kind of Google that, maybe we'll post a link later, then you can kind of download that. And it's sort of like a tool that combines lots of different AI techniques. So you can kind of, you know, generate faces or generate text or like detect a particular object, and you can kind of experiment that, and it's quite user friendly. So you don't necessarily need to be able to code. And apart from that, I think if you kind of figure out what's most interesting for you, if you want to generate images or text or a particular aesthetic, frequently there are also websites online where you can kind of, you know, upload an image and then it will be changed to a particular kind of aesthetic style. So there are certainly lots of kind of different tools like that.
Libby, have you got any advice?
Yeah, I mean, I was exactly as Luba, Runway ML. I've used it a little bit myself. It's pretty good. You can load your own data sets in and train up models and so on. And there's loads of videos on YouTube to follow along for different sort of aesthetics or way of getting interesting things out of what's on there. I think that's the best place. Yeah, I'll just leave it there.
Okay. All right. I'll take the lead on this question, but it relates to another question that has been asked on the chat as well. We've recently been hearing a huge amount about NFTs, non-fungible tokens. What do you see the role of NFTs to be from your perspective? And the question from the chat from Lika de Vrieschow has said it's hard to get your work published as an NFT, and has the market now become overcrowded with NFTs? What do you think?
Shall I? I mean, first of all, there's a platform. So you say it's hard to get your work published. I think that's on like the bigger platforms like Super Rare or Nifty Gateway. There's a platform that a lot of like AI artists I know have moved over to called, it's in Latin, Hic et Nunc. Is that correct, Luba? You're nodding.
I think so. That's how I would say it. Yeah.
And it's using a different type of blockchain compared to the Ethereum and Bitcoin blockchain, which is proof of stake instead of proof of work. So it's much better in terms of carbon emissions, but it's also really, really cheap to mint your work on there. So it uses the Tesos blockchain. I just tried out one picture just to see how it was, and it was okay. The process was fine, and I think it cost me like 30p or something ridiculous. It was very cheap. But then in terms of like, is the market oversaturated? I mean, it could be that we've all been stuck at home for a year and people have been looking for things to do. But I'm sure perhaps there is a bubble at the moment. I've been trying to figure out if it is like a pyramid scheme. I think perhaps if you look at like the definitions of what makes a pyramid scheme, I think the NFT market could satisfy most of them. So it could be like the dot-com bubble. This is my opinion, of course. But then, of course, longer term, there will be a place for these things, if that makes sense. But there could be like a collapse before then. That's just my opinion, but I might be wrong.
Luba, do you want to add some thoughts?
Yeah, a lot of artists have kind of moved on to the NFT platform. And I think in terms of kind of AI art, and I think digital art in general, it's like really great to have this this kind of revenue stream where people are like very interested in purchasing these NFTs. But yeah, I think, I'm also not sure if it's a bulb, because there's been so much excitement about it over the past few months, and we'll have to see how it kind of matures and develops. But I think if you are an artist and you are kind of making work that is digital, I think, you could consider minting it and putting it on to kind of one of these platforms. The Hic et Nunc is one where a lot of the AI artists are at. But I probably wouldn't kind of advise that you kind of jump on a bandwagon, on the bandwagon just kind of to have something there, because that's, it's already maybe a little bit late for that. But if it fits into your practice, then I would definitely do it.
Okay. Excuse me. I think we're going to have to draw it to a close, unfortunately. Excuse me, I just got a tickle. So it's already coming up to 6:05. So on that note, I just want to say thank you very much to our two speakers this evening, Luba Elliott and Libby Heaney, and for their thought-provoking presentations and comments in response to the questions. There were more questions. Sadly, we've run out of time to ask them. We'll put some of the links that you mentioned in your talk up on the notes on the YouTube channel when we publish the talk later on. Also, thank you very much to the audience for engaging in such an interesting chat on the YouTube channel too. By way of a reminder, a recording of this evening's talks will be posted on the channel shortly, and we'll also be asking for a bit of feedback from those of you that registered. So look out for that, and please just do send us some comments. Finally, thanks again to our supporters, Arts Council England, De Montfort University, High Cross Shopping Centre, Phoenix Arts, Leicester City Council, the Bid Leicester and Loyal Free app, to all of our venue partners and to our technical support team, Inspirate and Sean Clark, who's helped with the live stream this evening. Just so that you're aware, we have 2 more talks coming up before we recess for the summer to focus on the installation work. On the 30th of June, we'll be hearing from Alex Mordvintsev, who is the creator of the Google Deep Dream algorithm that you may have heard of, and who was briefly mentioned this evening too. His work, Hexels, will be showcasing in Leicester in July and August, and Harshit Agrawal, whose work Master Reality will be showcasing in a couple of weeks too, which you can see also in Leicester. And then on 5th of July, we've got an expert panel discussion, which is where we'll take some of the questions forward to, which is being co-hosted also as part of the EVA conference. And that will be a discussion focusing on the future of creative AI with comments from Ernest Edmonds, who was one of the pioneers in computer art, Lucy Sollett, who is a curator, writer, artist, mentor, and consultant working at the intersection of art and technologies, Melanie Lenz, who is a curator specializing in digital arts, who has programmed for the V&A, and the winner of the first Lumen Prize AI Award for Art, Cecily Wagner-Walkenstrom. So please do register for those events. I'm sure we're in for a great treat to hear from them all. Thanks again to Luba and Libby this evening. And on that note, enjoy the rest of your evening and good night.